Welcome, yogis and golfers. My name is Cheryl Kemp. I'm a certified Yoga for Golfers instructor in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm starting a series of videos on how yoga can improve your golf game. And each week or so, I'm going to review one pose that will help your golf swing. So if you haven't explored this idea before of how flexibility affects your game, it's really a great way to work on your game during the off season. So a lot of swing flaws are actually related to mechanics, of course, you can't get around that, but they're also sometimes related to physical limitations in the body. And two of those main limitations are the lack of flexibility in the shoulders and lack of flexibility in the hips. So if you can gain more flexibility in these areas, that's automatically going to translate into a better golf swing. So hopefully over these videos, you can start to pick up on some poses and movements that will help improve your golf game without ever having to go to the range. In the future, I'm going to address more about how the breath works with yoga, and that's really critical. As you can imagine, with your breath, with the golf swing and being on the golf course, we've all had times where we've been on the tee and we're very nervous. Suddenly the breath gets shallow and starts to speed up, and then nerves take over. So when you work with yoga for golfers, one of the key things we work with is the breath, and working with training your body to use a deep calming breath in those stressful situations. So that's something I'll address more in the future. But today I wanted to go over a specific pose that a student asked me about. I had a workshop recently here in town, and he emailed to ask me about a pose that we did in the class, and he loved it but couldn't remember exactly how it went. So I thought that would be as good a pose as any to start with for this series. I've heard it called a couple things. I've heard it called dragon. I've heard it called modified runner's lunge. It really doesn't matter what it's called as long as you know how to do it and the benefits that it's going to give you for your golf game. So start out by coming onto your knees. So just come onto all fours. And then you're going to bring the right knee forward. So a couple things here before we move on about the knee. When you're in this kind of lunge position, you never want to have the knee going out over the toes. You want to make sure that the knee is stacked up right over the ankle or maybe slightly behind. When you go out over the toes, puts a lot more pressure in the knee joint, and that can cause some damage over time. Also, when you're working on this movement, you want to track the knee joint right in the center of the toes, so that when you add this movement that we're going to add, you're not taking the knee out to the side or out to the middle as you go through the movement. Again, that over time puts uneven pressure in the knee joint and could create some problems for you later on. So you're going to start out by walking that right foot out a little bit and bringing both hands to the inside of that right foot. And then maybe you walk the left knee back a little bit to start to get a nice stretch in that left hip flexor. So you're just going to pause here, start to feel that stretch in the left hip flexor, and working with your breath. So nice deep inhales and exhales into the diaphragm. And again, I'll work on this at a later date, but for right now, just make sure that you're breathing, not holding the breath. Believe it or not, sometimes we do that when you go into a stretch, particularly if it's intense. But really what I want you to do is work a level of intensity that's comfortable and brings, a good amount of stretch into that left hip, but not so intense that you can't breathe or that it hurts. And then once you've had a few breaths there, we're going to start bringing some movement into this motion. So knees on the floor, and you just start to gently rock the hips to the back and back to the front. Again, making sure that that knee is tracking straight down the line and not shooting out over the toes. And then as things get a little looser, you bring even more movement. So coming maybe all the way back, letting the foot lift up, coming into more of a hamstring stretch on the right leg. And then coming forward, and then coming back to the hamstring stretch. So working with the breath as you inhale, coming forward. Exhale as you go back. Inhaling and exhaling And as you're going through the movement, taking time to pause in any position that speaks to you. So if you're getting a really great stretch here all of a sudden and that just feels great, just stay there for a few breaths. There's no rules here. We're just trying to get the hips to become a little more mobile and loose so that they can work more effectively in the golf swing. And then finally, to finish up, one of the key things in the golf swing is also lower body strength. So a way to build lower body strength here is to go ahead and press into the left toes, bringing that leg up off the ground. And so this takes some strength to be here. So you want to be here for several breaths. If that's too much, just keep the knee on the ground. You're still getting great benefits. Maybe not as much strength, but you're still getting the stretch and mobility in the hips, so that's perfect. And then once you're more warmed up, a way to intensify the pose is to come down onto the forearms. That'll give you even more stretch in the left hip flexor. And then if you're really warmed up, maybe bringing the head all the way to the floor. So again, just working at a level of intensity that's a great stretch, but not pushing it too much. You don't want to scare the muscles. Sometimes when we try to go into a very deep stretch, it's a little too much and the muscles actually tense up. So you just want to go into that nice, juicy, comfortable stretch that feels good. So no pain in anywhere, any of the joints. So making any modifications that you need to make this a great, safe pose and for you to get benefit of adding mobility to your hips. So I hope you've enjoyed this little video today. Look for more in the future on poses that will help your golf swing. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.